Hi, and it's Carol Ricard, and welcome to our last and final workshop today, Healthy Relationships. So, this video is being recorded, of course, after the workshop. So, you're either watching it and you wanted to see it again, or you didn't get the chance to either get to it because you were busy doing the Broad Street run, or you just had to leave early. So, I'm glad to put this up and make this available for you. So, the tools and rules that I want you to walk away with are really to build on the spiritual foundation that you already have in your relationships. I want to strengthen communications and manage feelings in a positive way so that they don't interfere with your relationships. So, there are two maxims from Father Hopko that I thought were important. Number 33, which is listen when people talk, and number 36, which is when we speak simply, clearly, firmly, and directly. So, which leads me to really what I decided to focus on with healthy relationships were the roadblocks that we run into on our way. And relationship has to do with, spouse, friends, family, coworkers. So it's really a pretty broad category. And the number one roadblock that gets in the way of relationships is feelings. And to feel means to fully examine emotional lessons. So, rule number one is we are 100% responsible for our feelings. Nobody makes us feel a certain way. It's our feeling. It comes up inside of us. So it's not anybody else. So that means is that you cannot blame anybody else for what you're feeling. So you can't say you made me mad, or you can't say to your child, oh, look how you upset your mother. So it's about us and owning that. Blame is become lost amongst many excuses. So it's another reason why you don't want to blame. Rule number two is that we have a right to our feelings. However, we don't have a right to take them out on others. And that's often what happens in a lot of relationships. So has this ever happened to you? You go shopping, you bring home seltzer or soda, you're very careful to make sure that you don't spill it. You get it home in the refrigerator, right? And then the next day or so you go and splash. You didn't pay attention and you ended up with a mess. Well, that happens because the bottle somehow got shook up and the pressure built up on the inside. And I kind of like to think the same thing happens to people. And so, if you think about it, life shakes us up and the feelings build up inside, just like that bottle. The feelings pendulum is a way I get people to think about what do you do with your feelings. So you have three choices. You could be the person that holds everything in, or you could be the person that the feelings come out, and there's two ways they come out. They either come out like on other people, so you explode. It doesn't mean you yell or scream. It just means it comes out on other people, like you might bite their head off, or you implode, and that means that you're the only person to get sick. And then the third thing we have in the middle is to manage them. Now, the reason I call it a pendulum is because if you start on either side and you let go, it's going to swing all the way over. The only way to get to managing is to really start off at managing. So I want you to meet Jane, and she's a real person that I worked with in treatment at the hospital. And I was doing a healthy relationships group, and I said to Jane, well, what happens if you get in a fight with your husband? And she says, I go to the kitchen and I eat. I can't help it. That's what I do when I get angry at him. And the part that caught my attention was I can't help it. Because the truth is, we can help it. It might feel like you can't help it, but you can. All right. It's not an automatic, although it feels like it's a habit, but habits can also be changed. And here's why we can do something about it. So, and Jane was the person who actually helped me come up with this exercise. If you see one of these things going down the road, right? It looks like it's one thing, right? But is it? And if you take a closer look, you're really going to see it's two parts. There's the cab, and then there's the load. So, just like our reactions have two parts, there's the feeling, and then there's the behavior. And what I want you to understand is that we can have a feeling and not connect it to a certain behavior. Or we choose that. So here's Jane, anger, and these were, the three choices she could have. She could eat, she could yell, or she could use life tools, which is a healthy way of managing her emotions. Important to realize is we make the choice what we're going to connect to. So choice is controlling how our intention creates experience. So we are in the driver's seat here all the way. And sometimes to have successful relationships, what it means is that we actually might need to come up with a new choice because our behaviors are hurting the relationship rather than helping it. So don't set yourself up for failure. Here's the thing. The secret to success when you make a change in your choices is it has to be something you can do immediately. All right, so I'm going to help you understand this. I want to give you Jane's example. So with Jane, she had anger, and I gave her 4 choices. I said you could use your support group, you could take a dump, which is to journal, you could walk, or you could go to the gym. So the first choice Jane took was to go to the gym. She said, well, if I'm angry, let me just get it out in a healthy way. But the thing is, this can be tricky because how many places, and I asked Jane, how many places can you stop for food on your way to the gym? And the thing is, it is really too long, right? Because there's a lot of places between here and where she has to go to get to her gym, which is about 30 minutes away. So Jane's next choice was to actually, she said, well, my church actually is going to have a support group, and that's closer because that's actually just right down the road. So it's at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I would go to the support group and I could talk about it. But that's a little tricky too, because how much can Jane eat between now and 2 o'clock in the afternoon? So still too long, not immediate enough. So with a little help, I actually got Jane to realize that the easiest load to hook up to is the one that you just got to get quickest to. And in that case, a dump can be done immediately. So instead of picking up food, she could pick up a pen or a pencil and actually just start writing. And she could do that right away. Or even if you had to call somebody, that would be something else you could do right away. And the walk could be something she could do too. She could just put her, just walk out the door. Don't even have to put your sneakers on, but just go. So it looks like one thing, but it's really important to remember that when you see that, it's not. Just like our feelings and behaviors are 2 separate things, right? So have you ever said something that you wished you hadn't, like you had regrets, or you're like, it's coming out of your mouth and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that, or gosh, I really didn't mean to say that? Well, here's why that happens, all right? It's because feelings, when life shakes us up, the feelings start to build up inside of us. And it builds up until it can get above your mouth. So if the feelings have gotten this high and you open your mouth, those are words that you can't take back. So it's really important at this level not to open your mouth and to just keep it quiet. But there's one more level that I want to talk about. And that is, if you've ever done something you said, I can't believe I did that, or what was I thinking? Well, the reason that you did that was because the feelings were up to your brain, and your brain was flooded by the emotion. So, make sense? It's kind of like taking this soda bottle, and if I poke a hole with a nail right above that red line, all that's above it is going to spill out, and you can't stop it. So, managing emotions, it's really 2 steps to success. Step 1 is you got to stop the level from rising, all right? Step 2 is that you got to release so the level drops. Because here's the thing, if it keeps rising, you open your mouth, remember, it's going to spill out. So, why do you think most people fail? Well, I'm going to tell you. They only do 1 step. All right? They will only work on stopping the emotion. So they walk away, they count to 10, they do whatever they can, they stop it, and they walk away. The problem is that the first person that comes up to them, you know what? It's like, it all spills out on the wrong person because they stopped it, but they didn't do anything to lower it. So you got to do both steps. So it's taking the bottle, and one is stopping the shaking, right? So you stop shaking the bottle. You stop the emotions, whatever's going on that's stirring up those feelings. Step two, though, is you got to release it. And with my soda bottle, you'll remember we talked about in the very first workshop that it's really coming back to it and just going till you get all the pressure out. Got it? So let me give you a picture of this. So first step is to stop the level from rising, and I say that that's a passive thing, and I'll explain to you what I mean in a little bit. But think about a tub. If the water's running, you actually got to turn the water off, and that's going to stop the level from rising, right? But here's the thing. My brother, you know what my brother would have done? He would have turned the water back on when I wasn't looking, so then the tub would have still overflowed, which is why you got to do the second step, which is to release so the level will drop. And this, I say, is active. So you turn the water off, but you also have to do what? Well, you have to actually take action and pull the plug. So kind of the same thing. So we have passive, which is to stop, and active, which is release. So let me give you some examples. So all these things are actually examples that are kind of calming. Think of things that are calming, but they don't require any muscles. You know, your eye, yes, I know you got eye muscles, but really you're not using muscles when you're reading. You're listening to music, breathing, meditating, even just using your nose, your sense. However, if you look at these over here, all of these are actually require muscles in order to do. So if I'm talk, walk, or write, sing or dancing helps make the music active. Cleaning for some people. For other people, guess what? It's not going to work. That's why exercise is great. And yoga. And one I left off here was even gardening. It could be a release. So the quick three are to walk, talk, or write. So if you can just kind of hang on to these, walk, talk, or write, those are the three that you always, always, always could do immediately. All right. And dumping is when you write, but you don't read what you wrote. So you know what? I had lots of times when I dumped my feelings about my boss so that they didn't come out when I was talking to her. But you write it and you destroy it, shred it, rip it up. Oh, and the reason you don't read it is because when you read it, it actually reloads it. So here's some examples of how this works. So we have an old behavior, all right? So biting nails and yelling. And we have a new behavior. So the top one is mine, and the bottom one is actually, belongs to, that really should say eat. So sorry about that. I grabbed the wrong slides. So pretend the top one is me. And what you can do is if you have a particular feeling, like Jane knows that when she gets angry, that's the feeling she struggles with. Or you can pick a behavior. And for me, I decided it was biting my nails that I wanted to stop. So what I had to do is figure out and pay attention to, well, when am I biting my nails? What am I feeling? And so here's what I came up with, is that when I bite my nails, I'm stressed or I'm bored. So the new behavior I could do immediately was to chew some gum. Instead of putting my nails in my mouth, put some gum in my mouth, right? And so for Jane, when it was to eat, there we go. Instead of that, she could actually pick up the pen and it could be dumping. So now, if you have any questions, you can always send me an email because I'll be glad. Just remember to put healthy choices in the subject line. And when you dwell on things, it's definitely why emotions last longer. So you don't want to dwell. Anybody, I'm sure you can imagine what emotion this is going to be, right? The most powerful emotion we have, which is anger. And when we react, we actually are releasing emotion and cause trouble. So we don't want to react. We actually want to manage the feelings instead of reacting. So when it comes to dealing with anger, there are two special tools we need. Tool number one is aware. And if you remember this from my other workshops, this is really important. You got to know where the holes are so you don't keep stepping in them, right? So to actively work at recognizing existence. The second tool is action, a critical task implemented only now. So you have to take action. Aware has three different levels. You want to know your vocabulary, you want to know your anger style, and you want to know your anger pattern. Because all words are not the same. So let's talk about anger vocabulary. And what that really means is, what words do you use? So here's how I came up with this exercise. I was doing an assessment on a woman in a hospital, and I asked her, well, what happens when you get angry? And she said, oh, I don't get angry. I said, oh, okay. Well, what happens if your son says he's coming over and he never comes? What would you feel? And that's when she said, upset. And I realized that we all don't use the same words, all right? So I want you to think about, what words do you use? Do you get mad or do you get even? Do you get angry? Do you get upset? Do you get pissed off? And I asked people, we kind of brainstormed in the workshop, and then I shared a whole bunch with them. So I want you to think about what you would use. Here's the important part, though, is that I want the feeling. I don't want what you would do when you get angry. I want how you would feel. All right? So it's not what you would do. It's the words you would use to describe how you feel. So here's some examples. Annoyed, pissed off, irate, vindictive, cynical, aggravated, angry, mad, depressed, argumentative, discouraged, jealous, stressed, let down, impatient, rebellious, tense, steamed, defensive, ticked off, perturbed, hateful, disappointed, betrayed, hurt, guilty, furious, embarrassed, irritated, sad, disrespected, disgusted, overwhelmed, bothered, agitated, rage, confused, upset, disgruntled, and powerless. And a few more could be, depressed, anxious. Now, these words are important because we're going to use them in a little bit to kind of build on. So the next question I want you to think about is, how does your anger come out? So this is identifying your anger style. And I have three styles I think people fall into. There's the boiler, there's the exploder, and there's one more, the imploder. All right, so let's look at each of these a little bit closer. When your anger comes out, the question you can ask is, does it leave a small mess and no real damage to the situation? So you know that if a pot boils over on the stove, you have a little mess to clean up, but not too bad. It doesn't unless it's a pressure cooker and it sprays all over the room, right? Or when your anger does come out, does it leave a medium to large mess? And here there is damage. It could be to the relationship, and it just might be temporary, all right? Or even environmental, like you slam a door and you break the hinge or something. Something as simple like that. It doesn't mean you're assaultive or abusive, but it could come out and leave some damage. And then, does your anger leave you as the mess? And that is, the only damage is to your physical health or your emotional health. So this is when people get sick, their blood pressure goes up, their ulcers act up, their depression acts up, so that you're the only one that gets affected. So here they are once again. There's the boiler, which is a small mess, no real damage. The exploder, a medium to large mess, and there is damage. And in the middle, you are the mess, and it's the damage to your health. Now, I want you to beware. Different situations can trigger different responses, so that you could actually have more than one style. And the example I like to talk about here is, I had a woman who was a boiler. Everything in her life was boil until you crossed the line of disrespect. And then she became an exploder. All right. And she would actually get very aggressive in her words, kind of like tell you off. All right. So the next important question is, how long do you have? Right. So what I mean by that is the boiler. Are you a slow boiler? So it takes you a really, really, really long time to boil over, or quickly? Do you boil over kind of quick? If you're exploder, how long is the fuse? Is it long? Is it medium? Or is it short? My brother, when we were growing up, had a short fuse. I am happy to say that as he got older, his fuse grew. But I remember thinking that, your anger is going to get you in jail because he just seemed to be so short fused. And then the imploder, I want you to think about holding things in. Can you hold things in a little while? Or are you the kind of person that can hold them in a long time? The secret really is managing anger before it manages you. So that means with the boiler, you catch it before it boils over. With the explosion, you catch it before it explodes. So you put it out, right? And with the imploder, you catch it before you reach the implosion point. So the third level of being aware is, what's your pattern? And so this is, how does your anger start off, and then where does it go from there? And this is why you need to know your words and your vocabulary, because not everybody's the same. So I'm going to give you some examples. The boiler, you would actually have a boiling point, and it's trying to figure that out. The exploder, it's trying to figure out how long until you do explode. And for the imploder, it's how long do you, implosion? What's your implosion point? So I'll give you some examples. So an exploder, it starts out, you light the fuse, right? Because it burns in towards the stick of dynamite. So in this case, the person has a long fuse, and it starts out stressed, annoyed, mad, resentful, hostile, and then they get to rage. So it's how it starts off, and then where does it build from there, and where does it go? A short fuse over here would be person gets annoyed and then rage. So you can kind of see the difference, right? So let's go to our other example, the boiler imploder, because both would use the thermometer, all right? So this is slow boil, bothered, annoyed, frustrated, pissed off, stressed, or upset. That's the slow. You notice it starts off, and then the heat kind of rises. So that's where it starts off and where it goes. Now, a faster boil would be stressed, frustrated, mad, and rage. Now, I want you to pay attention to this word stressed. You will notice that it's in two different places. For the person on the left, the slow boiler, that's a pretty high and a very intensive feeling, right? But the person on the right, the faster boil, that's just the first feeling. And so that's what I mean by words don't mean the same to everybody, because we're going to place them in different intensities. So don't ever assume to know what that word means for somebody. So what I will ask somebody is, I'll say, well, it seems, that you're angry. If they say to me, I'm angry, and I'll say, well, help me understand that, because I don't know if angry is a low little bit of intensity or if it's a high intensity. So here's the action step, and you'll find these worksheets actually below this video, and that is, you want to kind of use your anger vocabulary. So, write out what are the words that you use, and then fill out which sheet best fits you. If it's your boiling point, if it's how long till you explode, or if it's actually what's your implosion point. And if you want, you can do more than one. Now, here's the secret. If you can take a situation that's kind of getting the better of you, and then use that specific thing to kind of help you get better at managing the situation. All right. And you can start from how it starts, or if you've lost control, back it up. Say, all right, well, you were feeling rage, but what did you feel before then? And what did you feel before then? All right. So action is the first level. And that means, just like before, you got to stop the level from rising. And again, passive. So here's ways to stop the level from rising. And all of these, like I said, just build on what we talked about earlier. Mental foxhole reframing is what you say to yourself. All of these are going to be calming things. They're very passive, so you don't use any muscles. Action, second level, though, is to release what's there, and that's active. And so the ways to dump what's there is to talk, right? I had one man who used to scream in his car at lunchtime, but all of these require muscle. And even crying, I say, is a release because it's letting it out. All of these could be ways of dumping. Think of a rowboat that has water in it. You got to actually take action in order to dump the water. So let's just review. First level aware was anger vocabulary, that all words are not the same. Aware second level was what's your style. And then the third level was what was your pattern? How does it start off and where does it go from there? And then we moved on to taking action. You got to stop it and then you got to release it. So communication style is the second barrier. All right. And rule number 3 is don't ever assume. My teacher taught me this actually in high school. The whole thing about don't ever assume because of the word, if you split it up, what it does. And then number 4 is if it doesn't involve you, don't get involved. Really simple. And then one more rule is don't think for other people. A girlfriend of mine she was a pro at this. And that would be I don't want to ask them because they're busy. And I'd say to her, ask them. Don't think for them. All right. So that brings me to ask. That's what you do. And what ask means is to acquire self-knowledge. So that's why asking is important. So here's the style test. I like to do this exercise with my patients. And so I'm kind of just going to go through. The wrong order is you go out to a restaurant and the person that's serving you has brought you the wrong order. So I want to talk about 4 different ways people can respond. So first way is this. Hey, you miss. You made a mistake. You brought me mashed potatoes instead of the baked potato I ordered. You need to take this back and bring me what I ordered. Then we have number 2. Excuse me, I ordered the baked potato, not the mashed potatoes. Would you please exchange this? Then we have number 3, which is a thinking. Person doesn't say anything. They think, that stinking waitress. She brought me the mashed potatoes instead of the baked potato I ordered. Well, she's sure not going to get any tip from me. And then the last one is, again, a thought. I thought I ordered a baked potato. Oh, well, it's here. I might as well eat it. Besides, our waitress looks too busy to bother. So, those are 4 styles of communication, and just going to go through which one. So, the first one we heard was aggressive, right? Kind of attacking, accusing, blaming. That's aggressive. Assertive was stating there's a problem directly and honestly, but also in a respectful sort of way. Number 3, which was passive aggressive, was really not saying anything with words, but letting their behaviors speak for them. And then the last one was not speaking at all, not wanting to cause waves, don't be a problem, so I just won't say anything. So which one do you think is the most dangerous to relationships? Now, at the church on Sunday, people thought it was aggressive, but it's not. All right. It's actually passive aggressive. And here's the reason why. It's dishonest. And the minute somebody says something to you, you know they're lying to you. And how can you have a relationship built on lies? So, for example, if I'm your friend or coworker and you ask me, you say, Carol, what's wrong? And I say, nothing. But everything about me is saying something, right? When I say nothing, I've just lied to you. So, or when you hear people like slamming doors. Now, here's the thing. I used to be the queen of being passive aggressive in my personal life. My professional life, I was very good at being assertive, right? I Can't explain to you why. Why I was one way in one area and why I was the other way in the other area, but I was. I mean, like I would give people the silent treatment. I once went 2 years not communicating with somebody because I was angry at them for what they had done to me. I actually had roommates that when we had a washer, I took their clothes out of the washer and I dropped them on the floor in front because I wanted them to know I was pissed that they had left their clothes in the washer once again. Not good, and I'm proud to say that I'm assertive across the board, all right? But it's really damaging. At least if somebody's aggressive and they say, I say, what's wrong? And they say, leave me alone. Guess what? That's okay. But the minute you say nothing, but I know that that's a lie, we're in trouble. So I want to go over 4 just quick steps to better communications. Step number 1 is to check the timing. All right. And you do that by saying, is now a good time to talk, or do you have a minute? When I make a phone call, I always check. The first thing out of my mouth is, did I catch you at a good time? Because I don't want to get 10 minutes into my call only to find out that I didn't catch them at a good time and they haven't listened to me at all in that 10 minutes, but we're just kind of doing 2 things at one time. And the other thing is the other person's emotions may be so high that they can't hear what you say, right? So if the feelings are up to there, you got to wait till they get down because their ears are blocked. They can't hear what you're saying. And it might even take a week for that to happen. So, number 2 is to ask a question. And my father was very good at teaching me this. I mean, even though he passed away when I was 14, this was something that I learned. And I had chores. I had lots of chores to do. Make my bed, take the garbage out, scoop poop, bring in wood, And so my father, when I didn't do a chore, would always ask a question rather than accusing me of not doing it. Is there and not with sarcasm, because sarcasm makes it become passive aggressive too. So my father would say, is there a reason why your bed isn't made? And there could have been a good reason. I woke up late for school and I ran out the door, right? Is there a reason why, the garbage hasn't been taken out yet? Is there a reason why? And again, it's asking a question. So instead of saying to somebody, you're late, you could say to them, what happened? And if you really want to be good at communicating, you could say the feeling. I was beginning to get worried, or I was beginning to get, frustrated. That's it. Third one is to not say the word you. Now, I believe we have built-in you meters, and they're anywhere in a sentence that you put this word. If you can avoid it, the better. So an example I was taught long time ago was to say I feel statements, right? That's how you can make it be assertive. I feel angry when you don't listen to me. I particularly don't prescribe to that practice. I actually have it even better, and I teach my patients even better. Here's what I say. I feel blank when So it's I feel angry when I'm not heard. So which one would you prefer to hear me say to you? I feel angry when you don't listen to me, or I feel angry when I'm not heard. Think of you as a spotlight. And the minute you put it in there, you are blinding that person. And they may not be able to hear what you're saying after you blind them. All right? Make sense? Okay. And last thing is, what do you see? So in our workshop, we had a donut, an egg. One of the youngsters there came up with a target. You could have a Lifesaver, a Cheerio. Actually, my workshop the other night, somebody said an Applejack, which I actually like better than Cheerios. But the point is that we can all be looking at the same thing and see it differently. And so what we really have to do is agree to disagree. That means that you see what you see, I can't see the same thing, and you can't see what I see, but I'll give you that you see what you see. Because you can't tell people what they don't see, because guess what? That's just not going to work. Okay? So, just kind of wrapping things up, what we really wanted you to walk away with is an understanding that managing feelings is critical for relationships, that our communication style can make or kind of break things, put the brakes on things, and that we can always be better communicators. So, here's a word I gave for parents. And parents, what they do is they provide a responsible environment needed to succeed. So I couldn't fit that in there, but I wanted to put that in there because that's a type of a relationship, and it's a special one that you provide as a parent. So you weren't. I don't have the tool cards that I can hand out to you on this workshop because the way I make them up, I can't kind of load them up. But you can catch me at carol@welluniversity.com, and again, put in the subject line healthy choices. And I hope this video was helpful.